Hello, welcome to the Thursday, October 13th edition of the OSU Sports Extra podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by Oklahoma State beat writer Kelly Hines. Kelly, we've kind of had a trick hooking up this week, but always good to be with you. Big game this weekend on the road at TCU, OSU's toughest test of the season so far, I think it's fair to say. Both teams ranked, both good offenses. How do you see this one shaking out?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like crazy to see all of the parity in the Big 12 when like week after week, you're like, this is the biggest test. This is going to be a really big test. And that's true. But TCU, they've been able to do in the first season under a new head coach, that's super impressive. It's still kind of early, but they've definitely found ways to win games. And that's been something I didn't really expect necessarily, but the Big 12 is crazy this season. So, but obviously when you have a quarterback like Max Duggan, who I think is kind of comparable to Spencer Sanders in some ways and probably has been underrated. I don't even think he started the season as the number one guy, and to see him make plays kind of similar to Spencer Sanders. He's just kind of a gamer type quarterback. They've been really impressive on offense, obviously. Defensively, Joseph Gillespie, who I covered at Tulsa for like a million years. He's their defensive coordinator, and Carlton Buckles, who also was a secondary coach at TU for a couple of years. He's there also. So that defense kind of reminds me of Tulsa's because it's similar schemes, which I wouldn't say it's an advantage or disadvantage because both teams kind of are familiar with each other. TCU's defense, Tulsa played obviously Oklahoma State in recent seasons. So they kind of have a feel for OSU's offense, but in that same vein, OSU has a feel for that type of defense because they play Tulsa. So I think it's a really good matchup. I think these teams match up really well. And I have no feel for how things are going to go because things are a little unpredictable, but I think that this will be a really good gauge for both teams. I feel like in the last few weeks, we've gotten a better feel for what OSU is and kind of their identity, but this test is it's on the road, and this is a really significant game in the big picture of the Big 12.
Yeah, you've seen every minute of every game, Kelly, and I haven't seen quite as much as you have, but I really like this team. I really do. I mean, they're ranked 8th, so other people do too, obviously, but Spencer Sanders seems more mature. He seems just better in every way. He seems like he's making even better decisions maybe than he has. Not that he was making battles, but he just seems better. And I feel like the defense is maybe a little better than we thought it was going to be, given some of their losses. I mean, is that all fair? I think
that's fair. I feel like this team has come together really well. Even those areas that were big question marks, going into the season. How are those linebackers going to do? The secondary, how is that going to go? All of those things that we were kind of concerned about going into the year. I feel like, it hasn't gone perfectly. There have been moments in games when, you're like, oh, that they just gave up a big play, or, just like the offensive line gives up a sack. But I feel like they've really learned how to respond to those moments. And it's a really interesting mix of maturity and experience that I think probably a lot of teams have. But when it's kind of that way, you really lean on those veterans to, get through it. And I really feel like most position groups, there's the veteran who's helped, get through that. And like at safety, Jason Taylor is a guy who has a lot of experience, has been a really good playmaker, and he's helping those other safeties along. And I feel like that's probably been, one of the more impressive things about how the season has gone is it hasn't always been perfect or pretty or all of those things, but they've just been really effective, and they've recovered well from mistakes. And I think you don't always have to be this dominant. I don't think there are so few teams that are going to be dominant anyway. I don't know if there's anyone really like that this year. Even Georgia, has had moments in games where like, oh, they look vulnerable, but OSU I think has been solid on the whole, and that's what you need. And TCU the same. I feel like just finding ways to win games that's what matters. And you're learning more about your team as you go on, but you have to be like feeling pretty good considering they've had some really big tests already, and they've been able to prevail in those games. I have no idea what the second half of the season is going to be like, but I just feel like to this point, things have come together really well in a way that you wouldn't necessarily have been able to predict for the first half of the season.
Sure. Now, Kendall Daniels will miss the first half of Saturday after getting a targeting penalty last week. Who's going to step in, and how does that affect things on defense?
Yeah, it just means, he's not going to be part of that rotation. He's kind of split time with Sean Michael Flanagan, who I think has played really well. And so I'm not sure who that next player is behind those two, but I feel like Flanagan's going to be out there for probably most of the first half. And I think it'll be nice when you get to the second half and you're able to bring those guys in, because I think they're fairly comparable. I think that's why they kind of split time, and that's what you need is, look at the game last week, 104 plays, the defense was out there for. That's going to be tough for a safety or for really anyone to be out there for all of that. Although, Jabbar Muhammad played all 104 snaps at corner, which is crazy, and did really well. But I feel like just having that ability to rotate guys, especially in the secondary, I think that's so big. It does hurt, not having Kendall out there. I think that I've really enjoyed seeing him play, these first few games of the season, because he has, like, you see moments where you're like, he's like literally growing up on the spot. I feel like that's what he's been able to do. And that was really unfortunate with the targeting. It probably was targeting, but you learn a lot from that. I mean, he's only a redshirt freshman.
Right.
And so I really have been impressed with him though, because he's made big plays, and there are other things that he obviously needs to work on, but that's true of everybody. So Mike Gundy, I think last week, described him as somewhat reliable, which I thought was a really funny thing to say. It's like, he's kind of reliable. Like, you're either reliable or you're not. But I really feel like Kendall is going to end up being a special player. He kind of reminds me of Kendaran Ray at Tulsa, like a guy who came in played quite a bit early in his career and just continued to develop, and there's just something about them that they just have some similarities. Just someone who you feel like is going to be a factor later in their career and even early in their career. But I think they'll be able to get through that first half with Flanagan. I feel like it's just that he's just gonna have to play a lot. That's kind of what it is.
Fair enough. So you wrote about Bryson Green this week, and I'm reading that story and reading about the depth at wide receiver, and I couldn't help but think of Braylon Presley out of Bixby. Of course, here in Tulsa, we've been reading and writing about and seeing the Presleys for seems like 10 years now. But anyway, so that's the first thing I thought. I was like, what about Braylon? I know he's young, still a freshman. Might we see him this year, or are we probably not going to see him this year?
I would love to see Braylon get some snaps. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. I don't know if that's going to, just be because of the parity in the Big 12. You're probably not going to have many opportunities to have a big lead. That I think a lot of these games you're going to have to grind it out, and they're going to be somewhat close. Even that Texas Tech game wound up being a 10-point margin of victory, and there were some tense moments in that. So I really think that Mike Gundy is probably waiting for an opportunity to kind of see what he could do. With the offense, obviously he had a really big moment, downing that punt in the Baylor game. He's just a very smart player, but he's also very versatile. I personally would like to see him, because of the depth at the receiver positions, I would like to see him maybe used in a different way. I don't know if they really need him at receiver. I do think that he would bring something else to the table with getting some carries. I feel like he's a little bit different from what the other running backs would be. And I think that he showed during his whole career at Bixby that he could be a guy like that. I just don't know necessarily that he's going to get those opportunities this year. It is interesting to me that he's not redshirting, but he's not being used on offense, at least to this point. So, using him on special teams, I think that he brings something to the table there, even if it's not, as a returner. I think just because we've been so aware of him and the whole family for so long that we probably feel differently or feel stronger about it than the average person. But I know that he would be a really dynamic weapon, and I obviously have no business coaching football, but if I were a football coach, I'd be like, we will find a way to use him. OSU has a lot of weapons. So
that's right.
With all of the other, you look at all of the talent at every receiver, and Jaden Bray has barely played, and he's a big time weapon. I just don't know how you can, find a place for Braylon in that rotation at this point in his career. And how Mike Gundy is. He's like, he doesn't really like talking about freshmen. He's like, they're so young. They haven't been through our program long enough. They don't understand things. But I feel like Braylon is not your average freshman. So I don't know if that answers your question. I just don't know that he will be used on offense much this season, but I do think the future is extremely bright for him. And I personally would love to see what he could do.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him. Well, speaking of Mike Gundy, he dropped a little nugget on you guys.
You just never know with him. You just never know.
When Mike Gundy's in a good mood, which he is this year, you just never know. He'll tell you stuff. He really will.
But it's just, when he said that, we were all like, wait, what? Because he was like, oh, I don't remember what year it was. It was like a decade ago, and I was like Googling on my phone, no, that was like right after, you had that incredible 2011 season. And then, but the timing of it is what kind of was interesting to me. So Tampa Bay fired their coach the same day that OSU won the Fiesta Bowl. And then, Mike said that he had 3 interviews with the Buccaneers, during that time. But then it was, I think, 5 days later that OSU announced that he signed an 8-year contract extension. So it's he talked to them for a while, but then pretty rapidly it was okay, no, we're gonna get this extension done. So I thought that was interesting because I would have never expected. 10 years ago, that sounds like a long time ago, but it's really not that long ago. I would never have thought that even 10 years ago that he would have been remotely tempted by the NFL, because he talks all the time about, I've never coached in the pros. I don't know what that's like. And, when people ask about, his former players being in the NFL, and he kind of dismisses questions because he's like, oh, I don't know anything about pro football. But you knew enough to at least be interested in a head coaching job. That's crazy. That was really surprising to me because, it's always hard to know how serious any of that stuff is. I feel maybe at that time, he felt underappreciated or had some friction with his athletic director or those sorts of things, and was coming off a really good season and maybe knew that the next season it was going to be a bit of a step back. But that was quite the revelation. And you just think about how things could have changed. OSU, I don't think would be in the same spot it's in now if he would have left. I think we're seeing, coaching changes. It's hard to keep that that success sustained. I think that's really difficult. So, and I don't know that it would have been a good move for him. You look, I think Tampa Bay has had 4 different head coaches, during this past decade. That's saying something. I feel like, and that hire didn't really work out that they made at that time. So that was just it just shows you that even if you think what's going on, you don't. Stuff is going on behind the scenes that none of us are aware of, and it may never come out, and that's fine. But I would never have expected him to be tempted by the NFL, and how tempted he was, we'll never know. I mean, I think it worked out really well for him and for OSU for him to stay. But that contract deal, got taken care of like real fast during that time.
And as it should have, coming off the year that
For sure. Yeah. I mean, he needed that anyway, but like,
yeah.
If he wasn't happy at that time, like that wasn't anything that was obvious. Like that was such a memorable season. And, but maybe he was like, this is going to be difficult to have another year like this. Like we've got to that point, and this is a once in a decade or however many year season, and I'm ready for a different challenge. I built this up to what it is, and maybe it's time for me to look somewhere else. But he just he's such a good college coach that so many of the things that he's great at, I don't know that would transfer over well to the NFL. But I mean, and at the same time, like really what he's been able to do over the last few years is delegate so much that he's not as stressed out. And I feel like that's probably how it is for an NFL coach. Like you don't have to worry as much about like your guys, getting in trouble on Saturday night on the strip and all of those things that come with being a college coach, making sure they're going to class. Like I feel like the program is run really well now, that it's probably not that much different from a professional organization. You're just dealing with kids who are in a very formative time in their lives. But Mike is so good at dealing with college players that I don't know that it would be as enjoyable for him, like the process with the NFL. I just feel like he loves to see those guys develop and grow. Literally, they're growing up like during their time in the program. And I think that he is really good at running a college program. And I at this point on, I mean, it was he said, something to the fact like, I thought about it, but that was then. I wouldn't think about it now, something like that. And it wouldn't make any sense for him to do it now. I feel like realistically, he's going to stay at OSU until he retires. And I know that like we often are naive to think things like that. But at this point where he is, and he said it recently, I don't have to, I can enjoy this program where it is now. I don't have to stress over the things I used to stress over. And he's right. Like this should be, these next 10, 15, however many years he continues coaching, he's built the program to what it is. It's like a machine. It just keeps running. So I feel like him staying at OSU, as long as everything goes the way he's, with the administration, they're all on good terms now. Obviously, things can change at any point, but I feel like the support that he has from the top, like why would you go somewhere else? Like it wouldn't make any sense.
Do you really think he might coach that much longer? Because that was my next question. If you were to just hazard a guess, because he's been there so long, but at some point the Mike Gundy era has to end. But like you said, he looks good. He's going strong. I mean, he's doing great. His kids on the roster, another ones at Stillwater High School. But how much longer do you see him coaching?
I would definitely expect him to keep coaching. Like if his younger son Gage goes to OSU, which probably a lot of people expect that, I would expect him to coach at least through that. So that's like another 5 years or something. Yeah. But he's 55. He's in great shape. He's in really good spirits. I think he's enjoying the job. And as long as you're winning, everything's great. So if they are able to keep this going, which having 16 consecutive winning seasons, that's incredible. If they're just able to keep going and he's enjoying it, I could see him coaching for like 10, 15 more years. I don't think that would be crazy. He just seems really happy and really comfortable right now. And whenever I was on the beat before, it just didn't seem that same way. He seemed stressed and tense and things that are normal for someone who's under pressure. And maybe just not completely happy at that time. But just how he's been this year, I'm like, why would you not want to keep doing this? He says he doesn't have to do a whole lot. He's making like $7.5 million and they're winning games. Like, why not keep coaching?
Sure. All right. Safe travels to Fort Worth. Gary Nieming's going down there with you, correct?
Garen, Ian, and me, we're going to have a great time.
All right. So we'll have photo there. We'll have columnists. We'll have you as always. Safe travels. We'll catch up next week. Thanks for the knowledge.
No problem.